Good morning, dear students. A warm welcome to all of you for our today's digital revision session for the subject Science and Technology Section A. As per your demand, I am going to revise the numerical examples for chapter number 3 based on resistance in series and parallel for today's session, and then we are going to continue with the revision for chapter number 4, that is measurement of matter. So let us begin with the revision session for numericals of chapter number 3. So the revision which I am going to take will be for solved examples. Resistors in series. We start with the solved examples for resistors in series because all the numericals of textual part I have already covered in my previous videos. Solved examples I had not taken, so that we will take up as a part of our revision. So our first example is 3 resistors having resistances of 15 ohm, 3 ohm and 4 ohm. 3 resistors having resistances each of 15 ohm, 3 ohm and 4 ohms are connected in series. What is the effective resistance in the circuit? Now, when you have to find out the effective resistance and it is mentioned that they are connected in series, then you have to use the formula for RS. What is the formula for RS? R1 plus R2 plus R3. Before that, we are going to write what is given. Given is R1 is 15 ohm, R2 is 3 ohms and R3 is 4 ohms. What is the effective resistance in the circuit? Effective resistance, you are going to use the formula. They are connected in series. If they tell you they are connected in parallel, then you will use the effective resistance of parallel, that formula 1 upon Rp. Now here it is in series. So Rs is equal to R1 plus R2 plus R3. Substitute the values of R1, R2, R3, that is 15 plus 3 plus 4 comes out to 22 ohm, and hence the effective resistance in the circuit is 22 ohms. This is the first example for resistors connected in series. Let us move to the next example. 2 resistors having resistances of 16 ohm and 14 ohm are connected in series. If a potential difference of 18 volts is applied across them, calculate the current flowing through the circuit and the potential difference across the ends of each individual resistor. You are being told to calculate the current and the potential difference. Now, first you will mention what is given. They have given 2 resistors having resistances 16 and 14 ohm. So R1 is equal to 16 ohm, R2 is equal to 14 ohm. What is, now they are connected in series. So what will be your effective resistance? Rs is equal to R1 plus R2. So 14 plus 16 ohm, that is 30 ohm. Let the current, no need of copying down, these are the solved examples. So already you have the solved examples in your textbook. Let the current flowing through the circuit be I and the potential difference across the ends 16 ohm and 14 ohms be V1 and V2 respectively. As you know, it is a series combination, so potential difference across each resistor is different and current is same. You are going to use the formula V is equal to IR. What will be total voltage? V1 plus V2. So they have given total voltage as 18 volts. So V1 plus V2 is equal to 18 volts. Use the formula to get the current. I is equal to V upon R. So 18 upon what is total S? 30. So if you divide, you will get current at 0.6, as it is current, unit will be amperes. Next, now you have to get the potential difference also across each resistor. Means you have to find the value of V1 and V2. So V1 is equal to IR1 because V is equal to IR. So V1 is equal to IR1. I is what? 0.6. So 0.6 multiplied by R1 is 16, so 9.6 volts, and V2 is IR2, so I is 0.6 multiplied by 14, that is 8.4 volts. So we are successful in finding out current flowing through the circuit, and also we have found out the potential difference across each individual resistor. So always while solving any numerical example, you should be very thorough with the units and also which formula and where to apply it. Next, we move on to solved examples for resistors in parallel combination. These are the solved examples in your textbook on page number 42. Out of 2, I am solving 1. Next, you can try and solve it on your own. Resistors having resistances 15 ohms, 20 ohms and 10 ohms are connected in parallel. What is the effective resistance in the circuit? This is similar to the sum here which we have seen. You have seen the example here. They are connected in series. What is the effective resistance? Here the only change is that these resistors are connected in parallel. What is the effective resistance? As we have solved for the previous sum, you will write R1, R2 and R3 values, 15 ohm, 20 ohm, 10 ohms, and they are connected in parallel. So you are going to use the formula 1 upon Rp is equal to 1 upon R1 plus 1 upon R2 plus 1 upon R3. Substitute the values of R1, R2, R3. So you will get 1 upon Rp is equal to 1 upon 15. See, R1 is 15, R2 is 20, so 1 upon 20 plus 1 upon 10. Denominators are not same, so you have to apply basics of algebra and you will get 4 plus 3 plus 6 upon 60. 6 plus 3 is 9, 9 plus 4 is 13, 13 upon 60. Now you have to get the effective resistance in the circuit. So instead of 1 upon Rp, you are going to invert it. So Rp upon 1 is equal to 13 upon 60 will become 60 upon 13. When you divide 60 by 13, you will get 4.615. As it is the resistance, unit will be ohm. So they have asked what is the effective resistance in the circuit. Effective resistance in the circuit is 4.615 ohm, which is less than the least of the 3. Which is less than least of the 3. Least of the 3 is how much? 10 ohms. So that is whatever effective resistance you have got, you know it is always less than the individual resistors. Whereas if you see what is the characteristic of parallel, the effective resistance of the resistors connected in parallel is less than the resistance of individual resistor, which is exactly contradictory to resistors in series. For series, what characteristic you have? The effective resistance is larger than each of the individual resistors because there you add up directly. So here we have seen the solved examples for resistors in series and resistors in parallel. All the textual numerical examples are already solved to you. So now we begin with the revision for chapter number 4, that is measurement of matter. In measurement of matter, in the beginning of the chapter, you are going to study 2 laws. Through the activity, we have seen the different laws. So these are the laws of chemical combination. You all know that the composition of a substance, it changes during a chemical change. These fundamental experiments in this regard were performed by different scientists in the 18th and 19th century. You know about it. And while doing this, what happened? They measured accurately the substances that were used and formed and discovered the different laws of chemical combination. So the first law of chemical combination which we are going to study is law of conservation of matter. Law of conservation of matter. Now, who has discovered this law? In 1785, the French scientist Antoine Lavoisier, you can see I have displayed his photo here. He inferred from his research work that there is no rise or drop in the mass of the matter during a chemical reaction. and based on his experiment he derived his first law, that is known as law of conservation of matter, which states that in a chemical reaction the total weight or mass of the reactants is same as the total weight or mass of the products which are formed due to the chemical reaction. So this is the first law, that is law of conservation of matter, followed by our next scientist known as Proust. He was a French scientist. He derived his law, that is law of constant proportion. What does this law state? He, as a French scientist, Proust, that is J.L. Proust, you can see his photo here, in the year 1794. He stated this law, that is law of constant proportion. What does this law state? The proportion of weight of the constituent elements in the different samples of a compound is fixed. He had taken n number of examples. I have taken an example of water over here. The proportion by mass of hydrogen and oxygen in water. You know that water is a compound of hydrogen and oxygen, is obtained from any source, and that proportion is always 1:8. What does this mean? 9 grams of water is formed by chemical combination of 1 gram of hydrogen plus 8 grams of oxygen, and this proportion 1:8 will be same for water which is obtained from any of the source. That water may be obtained from this ice, that water may be in the liquid form. You obtain water from any source, then this proportion H2O 1:8 will remain always constant, and that is the law of constant proportion. He had taken also many other examples, that the proportion by mass of carbon and oxygen in carbon dioxide which is obtained from any source, that proportion is 3:8. And he had seen that in 44 grams of carbon dioxide there is 12 grams of carbon and 32 grams of oxygen. So from this different examples he had proved the law of constant proportion. So here we have seen both the laws. Now we are going to the next topic for this chapter, atom, its size, mass and valency. Now what can you say about the atomic size? You all know that atom means the shape of a circle, and while drawing a circle you know you require a radius. Electrons revolve around the nucleus. So to determine the atomic size you should know the atomic radius. So also you have learnt in the lower standards, that is in the 8th standard, that at the center of an atom there is the nucleus, and there are the moving electrons in the extranuclear part, means around the nucleus whichever orbits are there, these electrons are moving in the specific orbits around the nucleus. The electrons are with charge, they are having a negative charge. So the electrons are negatively charged elementary particles, while the elementary particles that make up the center of the atom, that is the nucleus, they are positively charged. Why? Because they contain positively charged protons and electrically neutral neutrons. So to determine the atomic size is determined by the atomic radius. The atomic radius of an isolated atom is the distance between the nucleus, means the distance between the center of the atom and its outermost orbit. And this atomic radius is always expressed in nanometers. Now we move on to our next important concept, that is atomic mass. How to calculate the atomic mass. The mass of an atom. Now you all know that mass of an atom is concentrated in its center, that is the nucleus. Why? Due to the presence of protons, positively charged protons and neutrally charged neutrons in it. So if you want to calculate the mass of the atom, It is nothing but the total number of protons and neutrons in the atomic nucleus is called the atomic mass number. And protons and neutrons, they are together called as nucleons. So what do you mean by atomic mass? The number of protons and neutrons in the atomic nucleus together, it is called as atomic mass number. Now, you all know that atom is very tiny. If you think it is just an imaginary part. So, how to determine its mass was a big problem ahead of the scientists. They faced n number of questions. It was not very easy for the scientists of the 19th century to measure the atomic mass accurately, and therefore the concept of relative mass of an atom was put forth. A reference atom was required for expressing the relative mass of an atom. A reference atom. You know, when you go to purchase vegetables, then you say 500 grams, half kg of tomatoes or potatoes. Then in one pan the actual vegetables are put, and in the other pan a reference weight is put. Similarly, a reference atom and hydrogen atom being the lightest was initially chosen as the reference atom. The relative mass of a hydrogen atom, which has only one proton in its nucleus, was accepted as 1. Among the other elements, hydrogen was the lightest, and hence hydrogen atom was selected as the reference atom. What happened over here? On this scale, the relative atomic masses of many elements came out to be fractional, and hence not the hydrogen but later on carbon atom was selected as the reference atom. So on this scale, the relative mass of a carbon atom was accepted as 12. The relative atomic mass of one hydrogen atom compared to carbon atom becomes 12 multiplied by 1 upon 12, that is equal to 1. And now today unified mass has been accepted as the unit of atomic mass. It is called as Dalton. Symbol is small u, and 1 Dalton is equal to 1.66053904 multiplied by 10 raised to minus 27 kg. This was the, now today, in today's generation, we have highly accurate methods for measuring the mass of an atom directly. So instead of relative mass, unified mass has now been accepted as the unit of atomic mass. After this, we are going to move to the next topic, that is chemical symbols of elements. Now you know, when you write any chemical equation or when you have to write any name, every time you do not use the entire name while writing the equations and all, you use the symbols of that particular elements. Now how these symbols were derived? In the initial era, Dalton, he used certain signs to represent the elements. Then for hydrogen, for copper, he had used different signs, but that were not accepted on a very worldwide basis. So today whatever symbols we use, anything you discover in chemistry, that should be accepted by IUPAC. IUPAC means International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. So today whatever symbols we are using, that were derived, that were discovered by Berzelius. And according to the method of Berzelius, the symbol of an element is either the first letter. If you take carbon, see, you can see the first letter, either the first letter or the first and the second letter or any other specific letter in its name. Now here if you take only the first letter, it was a problem when many elements were starting with the same letter. You can see here I have placed carbon begins with C, calcium begins with C, cobalt begins with C, copper begins with C, chlorine. So you cannot take only the first letter. So first and the second letter was taken. See here, C, Ca, Co. Now here while writing the symbols, out of the two letters, the first letter is always the capital letter and the second letter is always small. So Ca, Co. Now here again a problem. Co, Co. So this Cu is derived from the Latin name, that is cuprum. chlorine Cl, nitrogen N, neon He, hydrogen it was taken as H, helium He, and so on. So different elements, they got the different symbols according to the concept, according to the theory launched by Berzelius. Now we have seen what is atomic mass, how the atomic mass is calculated. So what is meant by molecular mass? You all know that molecules means nothing but atoms clubbed up together form a molecule. So if you want to calculate the molecular mass, it is nothing but the sum of the atomic masses of all the atoms in a single molecule of that substance. And the unit of molecular mass is also same as the unit of atomic mass. See, if you buy the things which are having the same unit, 1 kg of potato, 2 kg of lady's finger, and if I ask what is the total weight, you will say 3 kg, because both the substances are with the same unit. So here also, as molecules are made up of atom, so whatever is the unit of atomic mass, that is Dalton, same is the unit for molecular mass, that is Dalton. Many examples we have taken for calculating the molecular mass. Still 2-3 examples I will take here. First, I have to deduce the molecular mass. Deduce means find out, calculate. For water, carbon dioxide, and I have taken sodium chloride. So to calculate the molecular mass, it is the sum of atomic masses of elements which are present in that particular compound. In H2O, you have hydrogen and oxygen. So molecular mass of H2O is equal to sum of atomic masses of H and O. That is equal to atomic mass of H multiplied by 2, because it is H2, plus atomic mass of oxygen. Oxygen is only 1, so multiply by 1. Atomic masses will be provided in the exam. So hydrogen's atomic mass is 1. So 1 multiplied by 2 plus atomic mass of oxygen is 16. So plus 16 comes out to 18 Dalton. Similarly, you can find out for any compound. I have taken 2 more examples to calculate the molecular mass of CO2, atomic mass of C plus atomic mass of oxygen multiplied by 2. So atomic mass of C is 12. 12 plus 16 multiplied by 2. So 12 plus 32 comes out to 44 Dalton. One more example is there to calculate the molecular mass for NaCl. Sum of the atomic masses of Na and Cl. Atomic mass of Na multiplied by 1 plus atomic mass of chlorine multiplied by 1. Sodium's atomic mass is 23. So 23 plus 35.5 comes out to 58.5 Dalton. Here we have seen 2-3 examples. Many examples we have taken. So you can expect any type of such questions in the exam. I can provide you with the atomic masses, and I can tell you the name of a compound and ask you to find the molecular mass of so and so compound. So you don't have to remember the atomic masses, you only have to remember the criteria as to how to calculate the molecular mass. We move on to our next topic, that is concept of mole. What do you mean by mole? A mole is that quantity of a substance whose mass in grams is equal in magnitude to the molecular mass of that substance in daltons. Means molecular mass of water. What is the molecular mass of water? 18 daltons. So 18 grams of water makes 1 mole of water, because what is mole? That substance mass in grams is equal to the molecular mass of that substance. So you know molecular mass of water is 18 dalton. So in grams, 18 grams of water will make 1 mole of water. Or if you take the example of carbon dioxide molecular mass is 44. So 44 grams of carbon dioxide will make 1 mole of carbon dioxide. To calculate the number of moles of a substance, you use the formula mass of the substance in grams upon molecular mass of the substance. To calculate the number of moles of the substance, you use the formula mass of the substance in grams upon molecular mass of the substance. Our next very important topic is to calculate the valency of an element. What do you mean by the term valency? Valency is the capacity of an element to combine is called its valency. We have seen many examples how to calculate valency. You all know that there are many shells around the nucleus. The first shell is given the letter K, it is denoted by K. Second shell by L, M and N respectively. So the number of first shell is N is equal to 1, N is equal to 2, third shell N is equal to 3, fourth shell N is equal to 4. To calculate the and you all know that each orbit has a particular capacity to hold the number of electrons. Beyond that capacity, the electrons will not be accommodated in that particular orbit. So how to calculate? You can calculate by using the formula 2n square. So in the first shell 2, n is 1, so 1 square 2, second shell 8, third shell 18, fourth shell 32. This all I have explained to you. So the maximum number of electrons which can be accommodated in the K shell will be 2, L shell 8, M shell 18 and N shell that will be 32. So to calculate the valency for oxygen, you know its atomic number is 8. In the first shell 2, second shell 6. For sodium, now this I have written only the electronic configuration. For sodium it is 281, hydrogen 1, chlorine 287, nitrogen 25, aluminium 283. We will take up an example to see how sodium chloride is formed. Sodium has atomic number 11, chlorine has atomic number 17, electronic configuration is 287. Now you know that this sodium will become stable by donating this one electron. So when sodium and chlorine will come near each other, this one electron will be given up to chlorine. So cation of sodium will be formed because an electron is donated. So here it will be stable with 2 and 8. Here it will accept one electron in the third shell and it will become 288. Now one electron is lost, one electron is gained. So valency is 1. And hence valency is nothing but the combining capacity of any element. So in this way, a cation of sodium and anion of chlorine will form a compound sodium chloride. Positively charged ions are called as cations, while negatively charged ions are called as anions. So you know here that sodium atom has the capacity to give away one electron, while chlorine atom has the capacity to take up one electron, and thus the valency of both the elements sodium and chlorine here is 1. So what do you mean by valency? In other terms, number of electrons that an atom of an element gives away or takes up while forming an ionic bond is called valency of that element. So here we stop for our today's session. Tomorrow I expect you to sit with the textbooks because I am going to discuss the complete the chart of valency from page number 54 in your textbook, and then we are going to move towards the end of the chapter, how to find the molecular formula of the compound. And then I am going to revise chapter number 1. 11 chapter we have already completed in the last week, so already all the terms are revised by you. So chapter number 1 will be taken up as revision after the completion of valency. So till then, keep your notebooks completed, start reading the textbooks and start applying the topics and concepts in different questions. Thank you.